Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, all you navigators of the virtual seven seas. It's time to quit all your navel gazing and shift your focus to the digital horizon. It's time for another Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And here he is, straight from the virtual crow's nest, brandishing a virtual sextant in one hand and a GPS in the other. It's the all-seeing, all-knowing Matthew Dickerson. Welcome to the poop deck, Matt.
Thank you. I'm not sure I'd use a sextant. How would I use a sextant? Imagine
it's a virtual one.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But I've got no idea how. You just held it up and you looked through it. And you went,
Good.
I'm
taking you on the next voyage. We go, James, here's the sextant. But imagine giving someone a sextant now and saying, there you go, just navigate across the seas or
well, like so
whatever.
many things, technology gets to a stage where you don't need to know how the parts work.
Good.
You just need to know where to point it.
Well, that's good. Now, a couple of things this week. One, our free book offer still going. So it's been good. The response has been good. People have been leaving reviews.
Great.
We've been sending out books, but I want to keep doing it. It's been working so well. I think it's a cool concept, so let's keep it going. So all you've got to do, pretty simple, you're listening to it now, so whatever app you're using to listen to this on, leave a review. We'd prefer it was a positive review, but we're not going to make that compulsory.
Be nice. Come on.
Just leave a review. Send me a screenshot of that review with your name and address, and I'll send you a book. Now, the book is from articles I write for various newspapers around the nation. About 140 newspapers receive a column, a tech column of mine each week. And then at the end of the year, I have to wait a couple of years. And then at the end of the year, I put together a compilation of all those. And it's actually a interesting snapshot, an interesting look back in time.
Yeah, a bit of retrospective, but a recent retrospective because technology just moves so fast, doesn't it?
It does. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is Tommy tape. So I'd never heard of Tommy tape until 2 days ago.
Well, I just heard about it just then.
Right. Well, I'm sure plumbers out there are scoffing at me right now saying Tommy tape, everyone knows about Tommy tape. But I had a little bit of a leak in the tap before my water meter. So I called the local council. They were good enough to come around and replace that. So that was all quite pleasant and happened quite quickly. But in the process of doing that, they discovered a little leak after the water meter. And, of course, they can't touch that. That's my responsibility. It was a Friday afternoon, rang a plumber. He said, sure, mate, I'll be straight around first thing on Monday morning. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to keep the water on? And it was a fairly big leak. It was quite a nice fountain. So, of course, I went to my good friend, ChatGPT, and said, what have I got that I can put on this to stop it leaking? And it told me to buy some Tommy tape. And I went, okay,
Tommy tape?
I'll take the advice.
Tape from a guy called Tommy?
That's right. Tommy, are you out there? Tommy. And I brought along show and tell for you because I was pretty excited about it.
Everyone can see this, all right?
That's right. So it looks just like, almost like black electrical tape, but it's not even sticky.
But yeah, it just watching you peel it there, it just comes off like it's a bit of paper that's just around, but you can see that it's coated in plastic.
It's coated in plastic. So then what I did was I wrapped that around, followed the instructions closely. We just said, wrap it around and stretch it. So I reckon I can do that. Wrapped it around. This is a copper water pipe with mains water pressure straight after the water meter. So you've got lots of pressure there.
Do you have to shine it up or polish it, clean it up or
just
whatever?
Clean the dirt off it. Nothing not scratch it with some steel wool or anything. Put the tape on it and it stretches to about 300% of its normal length.
Right.
You stretch it out tight and then once that silicone touches the next bit of silicone after you take that plastic wrapping off, it sticks like it was welded on there. I wrapped around there 4 or 5 times and said, this isn't going to work. Like it's just a bit of soft, rubbery silicone as if this is going to work. So I did it. I'll do a bit more. So I wrapped a bit more around there and stretched it nice and tight. And I sat back and I read the instructions.
Started to look like a cartoon version of a repair on a water pipe.
That was exactly a nice big bulge there. And I thought, how long does it have to take to set? And I read the instructions and it said, basically, once it's done, it's done. I went, okay, here you go. I stood back with my umbrella and turned on the water mains.
And your wetsuit. And
that's right, ready to go. And it worked. And it's still, this is only a few days after this little repair. Yeah. It's still holding now. So I can't hear any noise as if some of the explosions happened outside. So that should get me through till Monday.
Yeah, it's amazing. As used on the space station, no doubt.
Probably, yeah. I didn't read the fine print, but I'm sure they say that. But Isn't technology wonderful? Imagine having a little bit of silicon that just seems so harmless. Obviously, there's some chemical process. I don't know the process, but some chemical process that happens when that silicon touches itself and then says...
Chemical? Or is it just physical? Is it just the fact that it just has a molecular structure that locks together?
Yeah, good question. I don't know, and I should have researched before I spoke about it.
So have you tried to unpeel just a little bit of it?
I'm leaving that for the plumber.
Someone else's job.
That's right. He didn't turn up on Friday afternoon, so he can have the job.
He's going to show him, I'm going to have to replace this whole bloody pipe.
I reckon, without any proof to back me up here, that you get a nice little Stanley knife and slice through it. Yeah. I reckon it'll slice and then just fold apart because it's not sticking to the pipe
itself.
It's sticking to itself. So once you break that seal, I reckon that's the way you get it off. But I'm not telling the plumber that. I'm sure he's all over. It's Tommy tape. I'm sure he's
Or he's going to look at it and go, you fixed that.
That's right. Don't worry. You don't need me.
My call-out fee.
Well, that might be the case. I'll tell you next week.
All right. In today's episode, we're going to need a snorkel and flippers. Talking about wetsuits and whatnot before. Snorkel and flippers today because somewhere a couple of nautical miles to the left of Atlantis, the Brits have an ambitious plan to start building their own underwater city. And we'll bring you a little hope in another story. While we may not be able to save them from dying yet, we might be able to at least explain why your earbuds cut out. Anyone had any earbuds just sort of die on them? And mine, I feel like one always dies just a little bit prematurely there. And look, we're going to explain why your earbuds cut out, and that's a start, I guess. And good news for wind turbines and the potential to recycle the blades now. But first thing is first, with some hijinks just out of Colombo. Now, in 2025, in the thick of an energy crisis, the minute that the power goes out, you can be guaranteed that social media will blow up with all the misinformation and misguided blamers to the cause. Spare a thought then for the people of Sri Lanka when they were struck by a massive nationwide blackout. And the cause, Matt? Well, I'll let you spill the details.
Well, the cause was those pesky little monkeys. And I've been
Cheeky monkeys.
I've been to Sri Lanka. I've been to some places that have got a lot of monkeys around, and they do seem to be everywhere. They'll come down and try and get some food off you, and they say, don't feed the monkeys. Well, someone obviously at a grid or a substation, a transformer, obviously didn't read the signs because a little pesky monkey got into a transformer at the Penadura power station.
Oh, wow.
And had a little play, and then the security guard...
Started flicking buttons and switches and stuff?
Well, I don't know that he went that far, but I think he just touched some things he shouldn't have been touching.
Yeah, right.
And joined a few things together via his body. And so the security...
didn't end well for the monkey.
Not at all. The security guard was quoted as saying, I heard a loud explosion and I saw a ball of fire. Now, presumably that ball of fire was said monkey. So RIP to the monkey. But because the Sri Lanka grid, the whole system is maybe not the most advanced and most stable, what that did was that caused an imbalance in the frequencies throughout the entire nation. So one transformer, you would think, okay, that took out the area that was connected to that transformer. And so that's unfortunate for the people that live there, but it's not going to affect someone that's kilometres or hundreds of kilometres or the other side of the country. But this took out the entire nation, 22 million residents without power. So you mentioned about someone looking at social media blowing up. Well, people might not have been able to access social media because I'm not sure how long the mobile phone
Wi-Fi or anything like that.
Yeah, all of that. So complete lack of power. Now, this is a problem. And I know we've talked about it before when we've seen long runs of high voltage power being run from somewhere to somewhere else, underwater or across the land. It might go for hundreds of kilometres. And often they'll do that with DC, and we've talked about that before. But one of the reasons they do that is at one end they'll have a transformer that brings in power in AC at a certain frequency. They change it to DC, send it down the line via DC, and there's some other good reasons they do that as well. But at the other end then, they go back to AC at the frequencies that are around that area. When you're trying to get an entire nation synced into one frequency, now Australia uses 50 hertz. I'm not sure what Sri Lanka uses, but when you get some sort of imbalance in there, power stations go, oh, that's wrong. I'll just shut down because that's safer for me. And that's what happened is it cascaded across the entire nation.
Goodness me.
So the solution, of course, was a bit like every tech's first lesson, turn it off and turn it back on again. And effectively, the power stations across the nation turned off themselves. And then once there was no frequency, no power across the entire grid, as they came back on, they synced their frequencies and everything was okay again. So there was no major damage done.
Yeah, right.
But it is quite amazing what could happen. Now, this is a problem. Sri Lanka, they talk about the population of monkeys is about 3 million monkeys. So 22 million people.
Nice place to go if you're into monkeys.
Into monkeys, that's right. So go for it. Have a look around. Just don't let them get near the power stations. And they are finding that monkeys are coming more and more into the big cities. You've got deforestation, they're losing some habitat, a whole range of reasons, but also people keep feeding them. So they're quite healthy. So it's a problem. Back in 2016, a similar issue happened in Kenya, where a monkey again, I'm not sure if it's the same monkey, probably not because it probably expired as well, but a monkey caused a nationwide blackout in Kenya with the same concept. So it's a bit of a problem, but hopefully as we keep designing our grids and keep working on our power delivery, we get to the stage where we build in some sort of, not just barriers to get monkeys out.
There's got to be lessons learned out of this on how we design our power grid, sure.
Yeah, that's right. The resilience in the power grid and maybe separation and maybe some more of those DC links where you are transforming it, getting away from that frequency of AC and then sending it at the other end. So you almost have a virtual barrier between different parts of the grid. So anyway, an interesting and
very interesting
for that poor monkey's family.
So I love timber products, and I make no apologies for getting a little excited when we come across a story of modern tech leaning heavily into this excellent renewable resource. Now, engineers have come forward with a clever solution to two problems. One, how to make wind turbine blades recyclable, and two, how to remove tons and tons and tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere really easily. Matt, the Scandinavians, they've done it again.
They have done it again. They keep doing it, don't they? Sometimes I read some stuff and I get a pretty grim picture of wind energy because everyone says, oh no, look at all these environmental concerns around turbine blades. And I find it a bit ironic that I go, hold on, the wind power is helping solve our environmental problems. But it seems like the one most concerned about wind power are the people who are concerned about the environment. So I don't quite get it. But anyway, move on from that. Because one of the things they talk about when I read some of these various conspiracy sites is that the turbines are going to be in landfill in a couple of years' time. In fact, I saw one that was damaged in transit and they put it straight into landfill. And I'm thinking, well, some of those blades are $1 million each. And just transporting, I've been on the road when a blade's gone past at 10 kilometres an hour on a big truck and you think, well, it's not cheap to transport. It's not cheap as a blade. If you get the other end, you go, got a little scratch there. We better just throw it in landfill. Yeah. I reckon someone would repair them. I reckon someone would say, can we get Jimmy's painters around and just fix up that or whatever.
It's worth putting a bit of investment into.
That's right. But we do have already approximately 1.5 million blades out there that have already been manufactured. Typically they're made of composite, so they've got fiberglass maybe, carbon fibre, maybe a bit of steel in them. So there's a whole range of things. But we are working on ways to recycle. And we have worked out ways to recycle those, maybe not all of it, maybe 97%. So step one, I think we're okay as we go forward. We'll work out ways to recycle those blades. And let's face it, while it's up there spinning, it's probably okay.
Yeah.
Am I going to just say, it's been 20 years, we want a new one up there? You're going to say, it's still producing power. I've got to have a pretty compelling reason to pull that down and spend money on putting a new one up and then dealing with the old one. But when you think about the lifetime we've had, so the first commercial wind farm in Australia was in 1987.
Oh,
so
really?
It's not that long ago. That was in Esperance.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not that long ago. And when you consider how long we've had to develop coal-fired power stations or internal combustion engines, 1987, we haven't had wind power around for long.
I remember watching Rain Man, and can't remember what year that came out, but there's a scene where they're driving through the desert and there's all these wind turbines in the background. I thought, oh, wow, that's an amazing sort of sight, seeing all those wind turbines there. So that was a scene in Rain Man. So I was thinking, yeah, it must be sort of mid to late 80s that they've been around. The technology has come so far since then.
Yeah, so Rain Man, I quickly looked up, was
did
released
you?
in 1988. So
there you go.
So
there you go. Makes all sense. 87 in Australia.
That's right. Now, I'm sure they would have been somewhere else a bit before Australia, so I don't think we were the first.
Well, there were
ones in the
lots of
world.
wind turbines in this scene, right? So I just thought that's a lot of wind turbines there. And then our first farm would have started off, I'm guessing, reasonably small.
Yeah, that's right. So that kind of makes sense. So we haven't had a long time to develop them, but the latest development is making turbine blades out of timber. Now, the first thought I had, of course, was getting an old coast redwood, 100 metres tall, cutting it down, whittling away, getting to that perfect shaped blade.
And everything else becomes wood chips.
That's right, yep. And these old coast redwoods, to grow to that height, they've been growing for 100 years. So then again, the environmentalists would be up in arms about, oh no, you're destroying these beautiful old forests. But of course, that's all fanciful. That's not how they're made.
Well, actually, look, some of our hardwoods here in Australia, but the hardwoods can be quite heavy, so perhaps they wouldn't be the wood that's used. But they in 25 years, you can have a tree that is great for making telephone poles and whatnot, and not that much longer to make a turbine blade, I would expect.
And we know that we've got lots of forests out there that are basically used, that are grown specifically for the timber there. So it's not like we're cutting down existing forest.
Forestry has actually suffered a lot over the last 30 years or so, and I just reckon it's a viable industry. And not only that, as a renewable resource, it doesn't have to be the Lorax where we clear fell everything. We can selectively log, and this is a viable industry. I'd like to see it rejuvenated.
It is. But the good news is they don't need a single piece of timber, as you can imagine.
Come back to So there's a cartoon in the with what is it, the chipmunks, and they get a tree and they whittle it right down to get a toothpick or something like that.
Right, yeah. so not quite that bad, but you use laminated veneer lumber, LVL. Now we talked about that before when we talked about skyscrapers being
building
from timber.
skyscrapers out of timber.
So it's the same concept. So if I go back to my old high school woodwork class that you might have done, plywood was a common wood, and that wasn't that strong or particularly attractive. It was just bits of timber put at opposite grain, 90 degrees to the grain. So you made it a bit stronger, and they glued those plies together, those layers together. So take that, but give it a bit of a modern twist on that. And that's effectively what you're getting. You're getting these laminates. And so they're actually using some trees that are much smaller, some Nordic spring spruce pine trees. Now, they're fast growing, so they can be used in a forest that's grown specifically for that. And then essentially they're taking those layers and building a turbine blade out of this LVL. So what they're finding so far is that by doing that, you're getting something that's lightweight and strong and probably not quite as good as fiberglass and carbon fiber, but in the same realm, in the same sort of category, if you like, of the strength and the durability of fiberglass and carbon fibers. That's good. But you also get the stage where it's 28% less in terms of cost to produce it. And the good news is 78% less CO2 emissions during manufacturing. So that's all good. But most importantly, as you can imagine, it kind of makes sense. If it's made of timber, you can recycle it. It's not fiberglass and carbon fiber, and what do we do with it now?
And that's been the big issue, hasn't it? What do you do with your blades once they've fallen apart?
Yeah, so the stiffness to weight ratio is comparable to a normal wind turbine, so lots of good things happening with all of it. They've even gone so far as exploring the possibility of building the tower out of LVL, but at this stage it's still made out of steel. But I think that's okay, because you're probably going to get two things with that. One, steel is easy to recycle. So we know we can melt steel down and then make other things from it. But the other thing is you're probably going to leave the tower there and maybe replace the turbines, maybe replace the nacelle on top, but the tower is probably going to stay there. You've got your infrastructure underground of that, so that's not as big an issue.
But then nacelle, as you call it, the inner workings and whatnot, or are you talking about the case that goes on the outside?
I think the whole head is called the
whole
nacelle.
head. Yeah.
I thought I'd just throw that in because it sounded fancy.
It does sound very fancy, but surely, I mean, that's got a lot of parts that can be fixed as well.
Yeah, that's right, exactly right. So at this stage, they've done successful testing on 19-metre long blades, not that long. This latest production is producing 50 metres in length, the blades. Now, when you get your offshore wind turbines, they've got blades as high or as long as 100 metres, but onshore, typically 50 metres is fairly long. So if you can get 50-metre blades, that's not too bad. And they've got some testing they're doing already with some 4.2 megawatt towers. So that's a reasonable tower in terms of some of the towers that I've seen around where we live here, 1, 2 megawatts. So 4.2 is getting to be pretty good size onshore. Size. Again, offshore, you typically get a bit larger. So it's one of those things, I think, that technology evolves. What we've got today, when people say, oh, that's no good, look at that.
Pull the pin, stop even thinking about it. Yeah.
So that's right. You don't want to pull the pin on it. I think we'll develop. I mean, I'm sure once upon a time Tommy tape didn't exist and someone said, let's try this, and hello, we've evolved. So I think it's really one of those things that human ingenuity tends to find a way forward no matter what we do. And sometimes it's one step forward and 3 steps sideways and a shuffle backwards, and then we go forward because we discover things that then maybe aren't so great afterwards. But I think we'll find a solution to this, and it's pretty exciting. Timber, I'd actually see it actually. I'd like to see a bit of natural stain on those timber blades there and just see how they
give
look.
Give it some more aesthetics, and then people can say, oh, those wind turbines look really aesthetic.
It's a good point, actually. I'll send it on to these guys.
Oh, how tired are we with the internet algorithms guiding web searches and social media feeds? Now, I, for one, showed an interest at one stage as to how anyone could be sucked into believing how the Earth could possibly be flat, and now I'm just exhausted by the incessant, misguided pseudoscience of the Flat Earth Society just beaming into my social media with regularity. Oh my gosh. Well, there's a new site on the net now, and Matt, you're going to promise me no more pesky algorithm with their helpful recommendations.
So how do you get out of that loop that you're in?
I don't know. It's just like, well, even going cold turkey didn't work. But then, the mistake is that something flashes up and it's clickbait. Yep. And you just go, this is just too stupid. I need to see a little bit more of this. And yeah. Anyway, so the world is round. Sorry, can we just verify?
You sure you haven't been convinced after all these sites you've been inundated with? You're not convinced?
Moving on.
So someone came up with the idea of not having an algorithm. Now, the reason...
what?
I know.
That's
reason
great.
TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, all these sites, the reason they use this AI-driven algorithm is they want you on their site for longer. If you're on their site for longer, you'll be exposed to more advertising, you'll buy more of the products, you're more attractive to an advertiser, or that site's more attractive to an advertiser. So it all makes sense. They want you doom scrolling. They want you going down that rabbit hole and looking up and going, it's 6 a.m. Where did the nighttime go? So that's all part of this whole process that they get you in. And it's no different. If we go back to TV shows, you'd be watching a TV show and you get to a point and the killer is ad break time. And I can't get away now. I'll wait until the end of the ad break or next week's episode. So they're using the same techniques, just using modern technology. So someone came up with the bright idea of WikiTok. Go and have a look for it. It's an app. It's a website. WikiTok.
I love this name. That we've got to use something to do with TikTok. We've got to use something to do with Wikipedia.
That's right.
What are we going to call this thing? WikiTok.
We're not great at coming up with names. I've said that before.
No. But it's a formula that's worked, and so they're trying to drag anything out of that. Yeah.
And they are using something logical. They're using the swipe interface from TikTok, so you can swipe on the interface. And on your phone, that is obviously, and they're using Wikipedia articles. So all it is you go to WikiTok and it will serve you a random piece of information from Wikipedia. So it'll give you just a brief sentence on something that's pulled from Wikipedia. And you go, that's interesting. And so you swipe, I'm not sure which way, right or left, but you swipe one way to go and look at that. You get something that comes up, you go, it's boring, and you swipe the other way. What it will give you next if you swipe the other way is a random article. It doesn't say, okay, James doesn't like flat earth stuff.
So, but I might get flat earth stuff, but it'll be because it's random rather than because it's been tracking. Okay.
And think about the millions upon millions of articles that are on Wikipedia. So the chance of you getting something that might be related or linked to the previous one is very low. Obviously, the chance of getting the same article twice is negligible. You may as well say zero. It's not quite, but negligible. And it's pretty cool. Like I played around with it. I was actually using it on my computer. I clicked on it and it gave me a random article about a vehicle. And I went, no, I don't want to read that. Clicked on it, another random article about some little city I'd never heard of. Oh, it's interesting. Clicked on it. Oh, I'll read that one. So you've got that choice to go and look at it. Now, the problem here is I don't think it'll be commercially viable because I spent 2 minutes on there. I went, okay, I'll go and do what else I've got to do now.
Yeah.
If it was something that was feeding me algorithms that gave me a little echo chamber, I'd go,
doom scrolling,
isn't it? That's right. That's exactly right.
And you can, if you're a little bit too loose, you can be there an hour or 2 hours.
Time just flies. I'm sure you go into some other dimension where time stands still or time disappears quickly. I'm not sure which.
You have to be really careful to police it. I hope it works. I hope we have a revolution in the way the internet works, but I don't see it happening.
No, maybe not. But the other big issue, I think, is when you start doom scrolling, you go down that rabbit hole, you end up with an echo chamber. So all the articles you read are the things that agree with your point of view, which is terrible. You always want to have your ideas.
Or alternatively, the exact opposite of what
that's right. But it's just this little thing where it's just everything's saying the same thing and then, that's right, yeah, exactly right. So there used to be a website, I reckon it was 15 years ago, maybe not that long ago.
Did they have websites back then?
They had websites 15 years ago, but maybe not apps. So I reckon it was probably, let's say 2010, before apps really started becoming popular. And there was one called Stumble Upon. And rather than give you random Wikipedia articles, because Wikipedia wasn't that big at the time, it gave you random web pages. But again, it didn't work that well because think about the different web pages you get. There's some web pages that are just not that great.
And I can only go through
information.
so many makeup tutorials before I just give up. Yeah,
That's right.
I'll find something else to do.
So go and have a look at it. It's a bit of a curiosity booster. Actually, it'd be good for a trivia contest. Go and pull some questions from different ones. But WikiTok on your computer, WikiTok on an app. Go and check it out.
Okay, folks, here's a story that'll have your imaginations running off the chain. Now, who among us hasn't at one stage or another dreamed of living in an underwater house? Well, the folks at the British company Deep have gotten tired of waiting for someone else to put a plan together, and so they've taken it upon themselves to get stuck into building their very own version of Atlantis. Matt, it may be time to dust off that old Aquaman costume.
So you thought about this, have you? I've never really thought about it.
Oh, of course you have.
Really?
Oh, I tell you what, we thought about it so hard that up at, is it the Harvey Reef up in near Hamilton Island on the Whitsundays?
Yep.
There's a coral reef and there's a pontoon out there, and there's quite an expensive an overnight stay there, but it's underwater.
So you just dropped just briefly underwater.
So we went downstairs and we had that room for my wife and I, and it was hard because you can have the windows, the blinds drawn, and it's just like a normal hotel room, or you can leave them open all night, and you can just watch these fish swimming along, and it's just a very soft blue light in the water there. But I knew I was going to be so tired, but I just couldn't close my eyes. And so for the better part of the night, I was just watching fish. It was great. It was great. And also when you go to the toilet and you're just watching these fish outside.
And they're watching you.
And they're watching you. And when a snorkel comes by, it's embarrassing.
Embarrassing. So I get that for an overnight stay. That sounds pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, but living underwater.
You reckon? It doesn't get me that
sounds so
excited.
future, Matt. Like,
Well,
did
we
the
are-
Thunderbirds do underwater? I think they did. Was it one of the Battle of the Planets, Seven's Arc 7. He
Yes.
had his base underwater.
Yeah.
I always imagine what it'd be like to live down there. So you never did that.
I never thought, gee, it'd be cool to live underwater.
Well, you are the only person on the planet then.
There you go. So I'm not going to be a great customer for Deep, the company that's doing this, because it just doesn't get me that excited. We've got a lot of land still, and I know we are putting a lot more people on the land we've got, but the fundamental problems we have about too many humans, I don't know that it's solved by going underwater. Sure, you might solve a bit of the land issue, and we've got a lot of water out there, but you still got to feed these people. You still got to get water for them.
But who hasn't walked past an aquarium and just found themselves just staring into the aquarium for half an hour, 45 minutes? It's like Doomscrolling, but better for you.
That's right, with real live animals. So this is a company called Deep, and they're developing units, and the idea is permanent human settlements. So not one night just looking at some fish, permanent human settlements. So they've got house-sized submersibles. They'll go up to 200 metres deep. So that's a bit different just to going directly out of the water where you had your one night. It is
well,
dark.
I guess it's similar to if you were to live on a space station. So that's
Correct.
also something if we capture our imaginations.
Yeah. So I can understand that one. That's a bit different though to underwater for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I feel more comfortable
It's
with
just
that
so
than
much
going underwater.
space. 2/3 of the world is
Exactly
covered by
right.
ocean.
Yeah,
so.
right. So each unit's got 6 bedrooms, a kitchen, a bathroom, running water, which is kind
And
of
you know what?
ironic.
You're protected from the weather. Don't worry about cyclones. Don't worry about bushfires. Don't worry about blizzards.
Yep, you're protected
There
there.
you
And
go.
you've got a fairly consistent
I'm
environment.
packing my bags.
The water temperature doesn't change much around you,
No, that's
obviously.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And of course, you've got a communal area. And I imagine you want that communal area and the bedrooms to be able to get close to each other and get away from each other. That's all part of it. At the moment, they've got some already stationed at 80 metres, so not the full 200 metres yet. So they've got that already. And the first participants, they put an application in. They've been spending 28 days in these underwater homes. So just to get
Just
feel
as a
for it.
test?
Just as a test. See how you go. Go down for 28 days, see you go. Now, they have talked about high-end tourism. So exactly what you talked about before, where you and your wife stayed. Then high-end tourism, hey, come and live here underwater for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it might be.
Yeah, wow.
One of the things that's interesting is the residents inside them breathe a controlled mix of helium and oxygen to try and stop you getting nitrogen narcosis. Now, nitrogen narcosis starts to kick in when you're going below about 30 metres if you're a diver. And it's a bit like mild alcoholic effect. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you can say, come down and get a bit drunk without drinking
So
alcohol.
I want to look a little bit more into this, but I'm just trying to use my scientific brain to think about what that's about. I'm guessing because of the higher pressures, it's actually going to be pushing nitrogen into your blood a little bit more.
Correct.
Which is going to take the space that oxygen might have taken.
And the other part of that is I started to wonder, what pressure are they keeping these at? Because realistically, like an aeroplane, you could just say, we'll just keep it at the same pressure as sea level. But obviously when they start talking about nitrogen narcosis, they're obviously at a higher pressure. And
But
maybe
they've got
that
to
makes
force
sense.
the air down there too, and I wonder how easy that is, even with a sealed chamber. I don't know.
Part of it might be the equalisation of pressure was what I was thinking about.
Oh, okay.
Because
All right.
an aeroplane, as we know, expands when you're flying at 30,000 feet because you've got normal air pressure or 5,000 feet air pressure inside, and then outside obviously much less
Yeah, fair
pressure.
enough.
So maybe down underwater, if they put the pressure the same as normal pressure inside, and then outside you've got the weight of the water 200 metres down,
Yeah, that's
maybe
a
that
lot
would
of
be
water.
too hard to construct that. So maybe they've gone, okay, we'll make it pressurised the same as the water outside to try and make the construction a bit safer. But then it's a bit like a deep sea diver that's at 200 metres. You go down 200 metres for 28 days, 100
Yeah.
days, whatever, you're probably going to get the bends when you come back up unless you come back up properly.
And also, no one wants that whole, what was it, that submarine that went down to the Titanic, that effect.
Yeah, no, you
Yeah.
probably don't want that implosion effect.
Yeah.
Ocean Gate, was it? Ocean Gate Titan?
Yeah, Titan, that's it.
Titan,
Yeah,
yeah, that's it, yeah.
And they all turned to jelly.
Yeah, that's right. So probably not good for their advertising. Only one has collapsed so far in the last 30
You don't have to
days.
go 200 metres deep on your first go. You can just sort of go just below the surface on your first go, perhaps, and then get a bit bolder.
maybe that's it. Because that's, to me, okay, I'm down 200 metres. Oh no, there's a leak. Where's the Tommy tape? Bring in the Tommy tape. Maybe they've got a bulk deal with Tommy tape.
I'm also thinking about, like, if you're a red wine collector, like it'd be that's such an even sort of temperature. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff that you have to worry about when you're collecting wines up here on the surface.
Yeah, so you have a little cellar that's actually exposed directly to the ocean,
Doesn't
so
have
it's
to be
always
down.
the
Your
same
cellar
temperature.
could go up.
It
you know?
could. Yeah, that's right. So it's quite a fascinating concept. There's another group that's talked about a floating city for 12,000 people, but this is a bit different. This is all underwater. Keep an eye out for it. I just find it fascinating. I think one of the issues that I don't know how they'll solve is the lack of sunlight. So we get vitamin D3 is produced by our exposure to the sunlight. And I remember I was doing some work over in Copenhagen one time, and we're in the car driving to this particular site, and the people in the car were telling me about the crazy cows. And I thought they had a bit of a land of me, but I went and researched afterwards, and it's true. In winter, when you've got such a lack of sunlight and the cows are kept indoors, they let the cows out every few days just to get some outside exposure to sunlight
Right.
for the few hours a day, because the cows start going a bit crazy. They start pacing. They start going
Yeah,
in
right.
circles. They start licking the walls.
Right.
And I'm going, yeah,
That's
sure
not
thing,
vitamin
guys.
D, is it? Vitamin D is rickets and your bone strength and stuff.
Well, again, I'm going on the full scientific evidence of the
Right.
guys in the car telling me about this as we're driving up towards
Yeah,
Copenhagen.
okay, right. Yeah, but they do.
They said
Crazy cows.
when they've just got this lack of sunlight from, well, again, they talk about lack of sunlight from the long winter nights and the short winter days as you go towards the north of Europe. They said it's a known thing about the crazy
I get
cows.
cabin fever if I've been in the house for longer than about half a day.
Well, here you go. Now you say you want to live underwater and you're having cabin fever.
Oh, I'm just full of paradoxes. Yeah, no.
So I do wonder about that, about getting enough exposure to the equivalent of sunlight. And you can't just say to your kid, look, I've had enough of you, just go outside and play. And then you see, whoops, sorry about that. Fascinating concept and fascinating technology in there.
Claim your free Tech Talk book with this giveaway offer. Love tech? Love free stuff? Here's your chance to get a free copy of the latest Tech Talk compilation book in just 3 simple steps. Step 1, listen to any Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson episode. Step 2, leave a review on your favourite podcast app. Step 3, screenshot your review and email it to freebook@techtalk.digital with your name and address. The first 20 people this week will score a free book. Act fast. You're already listening. Take 30 seconds to drop a review and claim your reward. Send your screenshot to freebook@techtalk.digital. Now Tech Talk, your gateway to the tech world.
Long-range imaging has just been souped up a whole lot thanks to the modern marvel of LiDAR. Now, Matt, these high-intensity lasers will allow us to see through things from kilometres away with some top-notch resolution, am I right?
Absolutely right. So they're using single photon time-of-flight LiDAR systems.
Single photon.
Single photon. So you're getting pretty specific now, aren't you?
Flash in the pan.
It is. So they're getting these high-res 3D images from distances at this stage up to 1 kilometre. They're still working on it. They think they can get it to 10 kilometres away.
Right.
But they're just doing some testing, for example, and you can generate a 3D image of a human face from a distance of 325 metres, and it can see through fog. It can see a bit through smoke, not perfectly yet, but they're working on that. So they're able to see things through things that at the moment we can't really see that well.
Oh, right. So, yeah, we're thinking if this would be an excellent tool for, say, searching for people in a house fire or something like that, perhaps?
Well, that's one of the applications is getting through smoke. So you've got a house on fire,
bushfires and
anyone
house
in
fires,
there, let's look through that. Of course, when we're working on self-driving cars still, and we're not great at all the bits that make a self-driving car work. I keep saying humans are pretty clever. We can drive a car. Humans
Foggy morning be a problem for a self-driving car, so a bit of this LiDAR.
That's right, and just getting lots of things around and seeing what they are at distance as well. So you're seeing them at distance. So that's good. Robotics are going to use it. Unfortunately, you're probably going to see military applications, law enforcement, but disaster recovery, I think that's a good one as well. So a house fire, sure, but also a building collapse. Are there any people in there? Can we see through things there? Maybe not seeing through the bricks and rubble, but there's a whole big bunch of dust that might be generated. And I think of the images of 9/11 when one building collapsed, for example, just that billowing smoke. You just couldn't see anything. It was so thick.
Yeah.
So could it see through that?
But again, I'm thinking, okay, so this is LiDAR. Does this open the door for other technologies? Because we know that some radiation does pass through other solid objects like buildings and whatnot. Yeah, so whether we go into the X-ray or gamma ray spectrum with single photon, I'm excited. I think I might dive into that and see if I can get rich.
Yeah, good work. So I'm not sure how you'd go with some of those where you might start to expose radiation.
But
effects.
Single photon though,
might be okay.
Single photon might be okay.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, at this stage they're using a 3.5 milliwatt laser, which is safe to the eyes, so that's good. So if you happen to be there in the way and it wants to scan your face, you don't go, that's great, you see what my face looks like, but I can't see anymore. So it's safe from that perspective. But I think we'll probably see this in cars at some stage, but there is a minor problem. The temperature they need to use is that to reduce the background noise levels is about 1 Kelvin. So they need a fairly large device to keep it at 1 Kelvin. That's a minor problem.
Yeah.
They've got a compact...
super cold temperatures are an issue.
Yeah, they've got a compact cryo-cooler system to be able to run this. At this stage, the device itself is too large to fit in a normal car. But that's today. They'll miniaturise that. But I did think it's a pretty good advertisement, you'd think, for this sort of advanced LiDAR on your car, which could also act as a bar fridge. Just drop your beer in there for 3 milliseconds, pull it out again. Probably don't use your hand to put it in there at 1 Kelvin, but drop it in, drop it out.
Just for the record, for those people who are interested in what 1 Kelvin is, that's minus 272 degrees Celsius.
So cold.
Cold.
Yeah. So cold enough that if I put my hand...
It's almost without any energy at all.
That's right. Cold enough if I put my hand in to pull my beer out, my hand mightn't look too good afterwards. So,
use tongs.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe not metal tongs because they might transfer a bit of that coolth. Is that a word, coolth? I like the word
absolutely
coolth.
Not.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Like if we've got warmth, why can't we have coolth?
No, we can't. I'm not going to give you that.
Because I reckon if I was around something that was at 1 Kelvin, I reckon it would be allowing
There's
a
no
bit of
such thing
coolth.
as cool energy. You've either got heat energy or you don't.
Oh, such a pedantic. Right,
the rules.
LiDAR, very cool. I reckon we'll use that at some stage in the future.
Have you ever been frustrated by an earbud that seemed to give up just a little bit too quickly? Now, I'm on to my 4th set of earbuds, which I received in October, and I reckon that they're on their way out already. The left earbud just cuts out sometimes, and I want to know why. Matt, what is going on there? I'm just about ready to go out and dig out the old school wired headphones out of the bottom drawer that I've still got.
Well, some people do prefer those because they don't go flat.
They don't go flat.
And they don't wear out.
They don't wear out.
And I thought we had a reasonable view of why rechargeable batteries slowly wear out over time. So the electrodes wear out, they degrade as such.
Yeah, but how long has it been since October?
Well,
Not long
that
enough for a battery to wear out, and I want to know more.
Right, okay. Well, a researcher did the same thing. He was actually using one earbud for a time. I'm not sure why. Now, my son uses one earbud.
So do I.
He's deaf in one ear. That's why he uses my son.
No use for it.
But he's got no use for the other one. But this particular researcher was using one earbud and was using it for many months, for however long. And then for some other reason, he put the other earbud in to use it, and the battery life was a lot longer. And most of us go, yeah, we know that. We know that batteries degrade. So that was it. But researchers, scientists like to know more. So he said, well, I'm not happy with all the other reasons, the lithium deposits, the expansion and contraction, all those things. I want to know more about this. So he started getting to the point where he was using infrared and X-rays and using those while the earbuds were running. Now, when you start to think about an earbud, you've got a Bluetooth antenna inside there because it's got to pick up the Bluetooth signal. Mm-hmm. It's got a microphone so it can hear, and when you're talking to people on the microphone, it's got some circuit board on there.
Yep.
It's got a speaker and it's got a battery. Now you think about how small.
But does it also? Yeah. So it's got two speakers in it. It hasn't one to if they're noise cancelling. It has.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot going on.
There's a lot going on in those little earbuds.
And then you look at that and you go, well, where's the battery? I've got my AAA battery and trying to put it back in there. It's not going to fit inside that. And that's part of the issue. So as they've started to do the research with, as I say, infrared and X-ray, presumably you're not wearing the earbud while you're doing the X-rays on it, but while you're doing all of this, one of the main problems seems to be the temperature gradient. So different parts of the battery heat up at different rates. And you can imagine if you've got circuitry on one part of the battery or you've got a speaker or a microphone, it's not all going to be even. And there's no fan, there's no cooling system inside the earbud. So the battery heats up, and that's one thing that actually affects the degradation when it heats up at different rates. So that actually causes long-term damage, obviously slowly over time, but that's one of the reasons. So those temperature fluctuations and the environment you're in makes a difference as well. So if you're in a hot environment or a very cold environment, that temperature change across the actual battery makes a difference.
Right.
So stay at a stable, perfect environment
So
temperature.
over a hot summer, let's say November, December, January, I just got to stop listening with my earbuds so much.
Well, I'm not convinced it's a hot environment. Maybe it's a cold environment. So if you're out running in 5 degrees Celsius, it's very cold, but some parts maybe would heat up more than the others. So if the running temperature of an earbud was, say, 25 degrees Celsius and you're out running at 25 degrees, maybe that'd be okay because all of it would be at an even temperature. I don't have that information, but the researchers so far has said, yes, temperature changes in that make a difference. So you've got people that do different charging routines. They haven't really got much research on that. They've got different usage patterns, but it just seems to be that degradation with different temperatures at this stage. But they'll keep working on that because, sure, your earbuds, a bit annoying. I used to listen to 3 hours of music, now I listen to 2.5 hours of music. First world problem, I would say. Not directing that at you specifically, I'm just saying in general, first world problem. But what we do know is that we want to be able to get better for things that are a bit more important, like a battery in a car. Sure, our phone's important, our computer's important, our earbuds are important, but the car is the one where we'll notice the difference the most because when people outlay tens of thousands of dollars on a car and then they find in 5 years' time the battery life's not as good as it was, gee, that's a lot in the hip pocket. When you see earbuds that you go, oh, they didn't last as long as I'd like and they're $200, that's nowhere near as big an impact as a car. So this will change. Of course, you've got experimentation with solid-state batteries, and you've also got AI. Once it learns this information, once we tell AI this information, I'm sure there'll be a concept there where it will look at better battery management. How can I manage the battery usage? Do we want to see a big fan on an earbud? Probably not, but maybe there's some way to get some cooling across a earbud to try and keep that temperature more even. So anyway, great to see people do research on things that we thought were pretty obvious.
And working out what the problem actually is
Exactly.
is part of the way to getting to the solution. Now here's a thing that you probably never thought about, or maybe you did. If you missed out on a ticket to a big event like the Footy Grand Final, then what is to stop you from sending a drone up and over the stands for a bird's eye view anyway? Well, in the States, the FAA had thought of that when it came time for the Super Bowl, and Matt, plans were foiled.
Plans were foiled, but it's a good idea, isn't it? You want to watch a footy match.
I've missed out on a ticket. I'll show them. I'm going to watch it anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Just fly your drone down. You get pretty close to some of the players and be right over the top of them. So it was actually interesting recently in the Ravens-Steelers playoff game in America where the referee called an administration timeout. I'd never heard of that before, but apparently it's a thing that if you need to, you've got some other reason to time out, and there was a drone hovering above the field. So the referee said, we don't like this, let's get the law enforcement in and take it down or investigate, whatever. And it's a bit obvious, isn't it, if there's a guy out in the car park.
Everyone in the crowd had guns in there, so they started hail of bullets.
Yeah, they've got to come down somewhere, haven't they? Bullets when you fire them up. But what they did, the FAA actually implemented a no drone zone in the Superdome at the Super Bowl. So on game day, starting at 1:30 p.m, drones were prohibited within a 1.5 nautical mile radius and up to 610 metres in altitude. I don't know why they mix imperial with metric measurements there, but I'm not going to question that.
Because they can.
Maybe because they can. And then from 4:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m, they had a restricted area that went to 30 nautical miles and up to 5,486 metres in altitude.
Wow.
At that height, you're probably not getting a good bird's eye view, are you, of the game?
Yeah.
So that defeats it a little bit. But when you think about, for example, the number of normal flights around the Super Bowl, 7,000 non-drone aerial takeoffs and landings, and 600 additional aircraft were parked at the local airports during Super Bowl week. So obviously a lot of people are coming in and out. A lot of people are visiting. A lot of people are being there. And obviously there's things like helicopter rides that I imagine are out around the city when Super Bowl week's on. Throw all that in the mix with someone there going, I'll get up and have a look at the Super Bowl, and then you can get some ugly situations.
But how do they police that? How do they? Yeah. So is there some electronic way that they can stop people flying those things?
Well, interesting enough,
or
they
is
said,
it pull out your gun and see if you can pop it down?
I did have a farmer once tell me that he saw a drone flying over and he was shooting it down. I said, if you can shoot a drone as it flies above you, I'm pretty impressed.
That's right.
I don't reckon that'd be that easy to shoot down.
Yeah.
But if you've got enough guns going at it, maybe you can. But there is a fine. So there's a $75,000 fine, but you've got to catch the person. The drone up there doesn't say property of Matthew Dickinson. Damn, I should have taken that sticker off
And if
before I
you're
set it up
standing
there.
directly below it with you,
It might be obvious. But there's a bunch of rules around what you're meant to do flying a drone.
Yeah.
But obviously people sometimes flout the rules. And you're meant to do some training, you're meant to get a certificate, but people just pull out the drone, they just start flying it away and away they go. So catching the person, I'm not sure how they do that, but there's certainly some discussion about how you might go about jamming drones, for example, or you might have ability to track down where that drone comes from. So they're working on that, but ultimately they're probably just using good old-fashioned investigative techniques at the moment to work out where that came from and who might be the owner. Watching where it lands. We'll just follow that and see where it lands. Aha, is that yours? No, it just landed beside me and I've got a controller in my hand. I just found it here. So it's fascinating though, isn't it? But the NFL has reported a 20,000% increase. Why use percent in that example? Just do a multiple. Like it gets too complicated when you say 20,000% increase, but they've detected a 20,000% increase in unauthorized drone activity at games over the last 6 years. So obviously it's a thing.
So when I said you probably haven't thought about it, there's at least 20,000 people.
Well, it's 20,000% increase, so it could be a lot more
than that. It could be
than that.
60,000 or 600,000 people.
It could be.
Have thought about it.
One of the big things I think is a concern is obviously you could deploy an explosive over a large crowd or a chemical agent.
Yeah, drone
a nerve
technology
agent.
has opened up a can of worms, hasn't it?
Firefighters also had some issues recently in California where a drone collided with some firefighting aircraft. Now, luckily, no one died out of that, but you can imagine it could be quite easy. A drone goes into an engine, suddenly you've got a bit of a problem for that particular plane.
Yeah, so the drone, its presence increases the chance of an accident.
Yeah, it does. That's right. By 2027, FAA estimates there'll be 1.82 million recreational drones in the US. So it's an issue.
Still on the subject of the Super Bowl, and an odd addition to the run of advertisements that streamed during the game. Desperate to hold its ground against the invading Chinese counterpart called DeepSeek, OpenAI posted an ad for its ChatGPT, and Matt, that constitutes quite an expensive 60 seconds indeed.
It does. They got a discount.
They did, did they?
They did, yeah. So the cost for a 30-second ad at the Super Bowl, I've been thinking about putting some ads up for Tech Talk, but the 8 million price tag, I went, well, I don't really need 30 seconds. So, but ChatGPT, OpenAI, thought they might need 60 seconds.
60 seconds.
So they
to
did a bit of a
advertise
deal,
your AI engine,
and they got
that
14
everyone knows about already.
That's right. They got 14 million is the price they paid.
is that
So,
all?
but OpenAI say not everyone knows about it. So it's interesting. They like the idea of the Super Bowl because they said tech people, tech enthusiasts, people that listen to Tech Talk, that covers most of the population of the planet, know about ChatGPT.
But everyone loves the Super Bowl too.
Well, it's a diverse audience. It's
a diverse audience.
It's an everyman audience.
Everyone loves to advertise at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, why not? 130 million people is the estimation of how many people watch the Super Bowl. I'm not one of those 130 million. I get that excited by it. But I've got friends that have Super Bowl day. They take Monday in our time off work and have Super Bowl day and watch the Super Bowl. And good luck to them, I say. So it was fascinating. It was actually quite an interesting ad. It was not a pixelated ad, but it was made up of dots. And the dots formed a range of shapes over things that have been created over time. So man with fire was shown on there. The wheel was shown on there. So various innovations, aircraft. And I think the whole idea was that it was showing that AI is one of the great innovations of man, up there with wheels and fire. Not that we created fire, but we discovered fire, if you like.
Fire, but flight. And
So all those things they were talking about was the idea. And I liked the concept where it brought it all together because it used dots as all of these things that it came from, and then it said everything has a starting point. So the whole idea, because I'm thinking, why were they using all these little dots for everything? But it started at a point, and here we are now with ChatGPT. So the concept was interesting, but it just goes to show how much it's getting into every part of society. When it's on the Super Bowl, it's mainstream. The Super Bowl is not for tech enthusiasts typically. The company, this is OpenAI, is aiming for 11.6 billion in revenue this year. That's a fair bit for something that's fairly new.
They've got some competitors that have really thrown down the gauntlet.
They have indeed, and they've got a valuation goal of 300 billion. I actually got an email from a listener during the week, and they'd heard that DeepSeek, they'd tried DeepSeek out, they'd heard that DeepSeek was keylogging every keystroke that they were actually hitting. And while using DeepSeek, I can imagine that's potentially real, but their concern they'd heard was that DeepSeek was keylogging everything that they were doing, not when they were in DeepSeek, when they were doing everything else.
So beyond the use of DeepSeek.
And they wanted my advice about whether they should have a look at that. And the first advice I gave them was ask DeepSeek if you're logging everything that I'm doing. So they tried that, and it gave them a nonsense answer. But there's some things you can do. You can use keylogging software. You can use network activity. There's a range of things that I gave some advice around those things about what you could do to actually have a look at whether or not DeepSeek is doing that. But that's the fear, I suppose, isn't it? DeepSeek has captured the imagination.
Yeah.
DeepSeek has thrown down the gauntlet. But then people are concerned about DeepSeek as well, and maybe it's not going to take off the way it could potentially because it's owned by Chinese. But when we see AI involved, and I suppose the only disappointment I saw from the ad, I watched the ad, it was quite interesting, gets AI out there in the mainstream, but they didn't use AI to produce the AI ad. I thought that would have been the coup de grace. Produced by AI. Surely that was obvious, but they used humans. They actually did use the text-to-video AI tool Sora to do some of the initial concepts, but then the final ad was produced by good old-fashioned humans.
Someone wasn't thinking on the spot, were they?
Surely. I think they said they liked to do that because they were really showing that you still need human ingenuity, but maybe it just couldn't do it.
That we haven't been taken over by AI overlords at this stage enough to
Not
produce
yet. No, that's
an
right.
advertisement.
Next year, maybe.
Yeah. Now, who would have thought that the simple act of boiling an egg could be such an art? Apparently, perfecting the boiled egg actually is or has quite a bit of science behind it and is quite a complicated process. Strap yourselves in, folks. Matt, I'm happy with just a scrambled egg, but you're going to suggest we pitch our egg timers now? Out the door.
Well, possibly. See, I've never been a fan of boiled eggs.
No,
Mum
neither
used to
have I.
make them, and
My wife still loves them, but
Really?
I just cannot see the attraction.
Well, I see kids at school who'd pop their boiled egg, they'd break the shell and pop their boiled egg, but then they'd fill it, like it was obviously all cooked and solid, but they'd fill it with tomato sauce or whatever, and I thought the only reason you do that is because you can't taste the egg then. I'm a fan of eggs. I love my omelette. I'm a big omelette fan,
Same.
but
Yes.
the boiled egg doesn't do it for me. But maybe it's all Mum's fault. Because maybe Mum,
She was cooking it wrong.
correct. So maybe I don't like boiled eggs because they weren't done properly.
Not scientifically.
Exactly right. So Mum used to drop them in some boiled water, leave them for about, that long, and then take them out again. There you go.
5.5 minutes seems to work, but it's got to be just lightly simmering water. It can't be overly bubbling boiled water, and
Right.
it can't be about to be simmering.
So what's the difference in temperature between simmering and
please,
bubbling?
Please, I don't know. That's the art that I've applied, and my wife seems to like it when they're done like that.
Okay. Or she's very polite and doesn't mention to you that it's not very
Or
good.
she's super polite.
So luckily, we've got some researchers in Italy who have decided this is worth researching. Now, the problem is the egg white solidifies at 85 degrees Celsius.
Mm-hmm.
The egg yolk solidifies at 65 degrees Celsius. So straight away, you can see the problem. No wonder throwing it in some boiling water is not the solution. So to try and keep the whole egg consistently at about 67 degrees Celsius, it's not good enough to put it in water at 67. What you need to do is you need to put it in boiling water, so 100 degrees Celsius, say. You need to put it in boiling water for 2 minutes. Then you take it out and put it in warm water, about 30 degrees Celsius, for 2 minutes.
Sound too complicated. It's
Well, it
so
gets
much easier
worse.
just to leave for 5.5 minutes and come back. Yeah, sorry, I'm hearing you.
You've got to keep doing that. You've got to alternate between boiling and warm water for 32 minutes.
How much do you love your boiled eggs, folks?
Exactly right. At the end of that 32 minutes, you will have
32 minutes.
32 minutes. You will have the perfect boiled egg, and more importantly, it's healthier because you'll get some higher levels of polyphenols that are released as part of this process.
Right.
Now, they're micronutrients known for their antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. So
Okay.
healthier, fantastic.
Yep.
Taste better, apparently.
Right.
I haven't tried it yet. I'm not sure if I want to give 32 minutes of my
32
life.
minutes, yeah, precious minutes.
But if you do all that, you will get the perfect boiled egg. I'd love a listener to do it. I don't want to take my time up.
So hang on, I'm also asking because some people like their yolks runny and some people like them hard. So there's a difference between a soft-boiled egg and a hard-boiled egg.
So this would give you a solid yolk,
Okay.
not a runny yolk. So if you
Right.
like the runny
But
yolk,
then for the hard-boiled egg lovers, it's your white's too overcooked.
normally if you just throw it in boiling water, it does probably get too overcooked. And think about it, the yolk's a bit insulated, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So I thought, well, maybe that makes sense. 85 degrees Celsius for the egg white, 65 for the yolk, and it's insulated. That would make sense. But no, you need to just keep changing it from one to the other. So please, someone out there, James, this afternoon, if you've got time, anyone out there, do it and tell us if you think it's better.
See, I'd get to the stove and then I'd think, I'd just prefer scrambled.
That's the problem too. So here's what I'd love someone to do. I want to go further now. I want someone to boil an egg with James's method, just simmering, not bubbling, just simmering.
Yeah, so it's got to be just so you get it to boil and then you've got to turn the heat back
Right.
to get it to just simmering.
Right.
And then you drop it in, you lower it in carefully with your slotted spoon.
Yep.
And 5.5 minutes.
Okay, so try that. I want someone to try that, and then also try the boiling water, 100 degrees Celsius, change it to 30 degrees Celsius every 2 minutes for 32
Right.
minutes. Do that, and then get someone to do a blind taste test.
Right.
I want them
Well,
then
if we're
to
going to do
taste
this
the two.
properly, we're going to need at least 100 repetitions. So
Okay, I need 100 listeners out there to do this for us. It's got to be. I'm okay with not a double blind because it's
Okay.
going to be hard for a double blind.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with just the taster
Right.
to be unaware of which one was boiled via which method, and probably to do it right, not just the 100 repetitions. You probably want to do a few at the same time. So you've got a couple of eggs you're doing with the traditional method and a couple you're doing with the other method.
and get one person to eat them all. This is sounding like a scene out of Cool Hand Luke. That's one of my favourite scenes.
So I'm looking forward to some feedback and some eggs being consumed. And let's face it, we're doing something good for the egg industry here, James. We're getting eggs to be consumed more.
We are, yes. Yes, if you can afford to do it, that is, with the price of eggs as they are.
You know
And
what?
with that, our egg timer has run out, folks. Run out of virtual sand, and we are cooked. Pass me an egg cup, Matt. Well done, another cracking tech talk. Pardon the pun. Awesome today.
I'd love to say I'm off to cook some eggs, but I'm not, James. I might cook an omelette, but I'm not cooking boiled eggs. But I'm going to play with WikiTok a bit more. I'm fascinated by that, and I'm fascinated by what random bits of information. I love learning stuff. Some random bits of information might pop up there.
I'll
as
tell you,
go through
I
that.
loved a couple of stories. I love the timber turbine blades, and I love the underwater homes. Yes, I love them, even though I like to get out and get in the sunshine. But ladies and gentlemen, look, get your future ticket or your ticket to the future right here. Thank you for tuning in to another minty fresh episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you a happy and productive week ahead. We'll be back in 7 days with another glimpse into your bright future, and I hope to catch you then. Until then, take care of yourself.